John was in his private restroom. Patricia had just paid him another visit, and he was doing the only thing he could. He had to do something, anything, to get that witch out of his head. He focused on the images cavorting on his tablet, trying to not think of her breasts, her curves, her delicious lips, her eyes, those amazing, beautiful eyes. It wasn't working. He switched off his tablet and punched the wall. It wasn't working. Nothing was working. She was all he could think about these days, and every friendly visit she paid him, this time in a nearly transparent blouse, made it worse. God, he wanted her more than he wanted any woman before. He wanted nothing more than sweep her up his arms and do something completely suicidally stupid. He didn't know exactly how, but any man, even Tak Nakamura, who took her to bed, wound up with her leash around his neck. It must be something she knew, something she did, something amazing, he bet. He wondered what it could be. Now nice it must be. And he punched the wall again, and again, and again. She was winning. He punched the wall, shattering the tiles. He straightened his uniform, yes, his uniform, and looked at the mirror, gently touching his rank, trying to remind himself who he was before he was lost completely. A sleek black limo without its phoenix flags glided into the spaceport. It silently moved through the gates to the landing pads and slid into the cargo bay of a nondescript freighter. Once the bay doors closed, Crimson stepped out. She normally confined herself to the embassy, but this particular errand required her personal attention. Standing in the bay was just one person, a human woman wearing a ragged t-shirt, a brown fleece hoodie, and faded blue jeans holding a single suitcase. "Crimson, I presume," the woman cheerfully said as she approached. Crimson looked at her skeptically. She looked soft, almost pudgy, certainly nothing like the single most deadly assassin in the Republic, quite possibly the entire galaxy. She looked average, maybe even below average, complete nobody, a loser. "Are you the one known as the Hatchet?" Crimson asked, raising an eyebrow. "In the flesh," the woman broke out in a goofy-looking grin. "Call me Brenda." "Okay, Brenda," Crimson replied. "I assume you are aware of your target." "Yep," Brenda grinned. "You guys want Director Axlia, the current head of Federation Intelligence, gone. This is going to be fun." Crimson looked her up and down again. "Where are your weapons? If you wanted some loser with a sniper rifle, you could have saved a lot of credits." Brenda grinned. "I'm going to whip together a little something once I settle in. I sort of know what I'm going to do, but I need to get a feel for the target first." "You were fully briefed," Crimson said, her dissatisfaction increasing. "Yeah, not really," Brenda chuckled. "The client always leaves out the good stuff." Crimson replied. "Don't worry, though," Brenda said, closing her eyes briefly. When they opened, Crimson was looking right into the gates of hell itself. "I always find out what I need," Brenda said in a pleasant but terrifying voice. It reminded her of Patricia. Crimson smiled as she felt a chill run down her spine. No, she was wrong. This was a killer. Brenda blinked, and the gates of hell were replaced by big, brown, slightly confused-looking puppy dog eyes. "I will leave you to your work, then," Crimson said, handing her a data crystal. "Thanks," Brenda said brightly as she tucked the crystal away. "Forgive me for asking," she said, "but you guys have people for this sort of thing. Why bring me in?" "Our people may have been compromised," Crimson replied calmly. "And we wanted the very best for this job." "Well," Brenda grinned a goofy, lopsided grin, "you get what you pay for, and you? You paid for the very best. I'll give you a few minutes before I debark." Crimson smiled, got into the limo, and drove away. Director Axlea swam down the corridors of the Raylona, a Callant diplomatic vessel in orbit around the capital. She made her way to the innermost and most protected and shielded part of the vessel. There she entered a pitch-black chamber. She tried to remain calm and confident as the doors closed behind her, plunging her into complete darkness. A dim blue light started to glow. It was coming from a single antenna sprouting from the head of a large, pale white creature, about 3 meters long, with a serpentine body and a large mouth filled with rows of needle-sharp teeth contained in a large crystal enclosure. It cocked its head to the side, looking at her with a milky white eye. Axlia curled up on the deck, drooping her head towards the floor in respect. "Axlia," the ancient-looking creature hissed. For what purpose have you summoned me? My lord, she said in a deferential tone, I wish to communicate news of the outside realm and to explain my actions before I myself am summoned. I see, the creature hissed. Yes, I have read much concerning your recent actions and ambitions. The reports are concerning... The human Patricia Who is on the move, my lord. Ah, yes, your favorite monster from the deep, the creature chuckled. You commit murder and blackmail over a single sophont of a lesser race. The Terrans are no mere lesser race, my lord. Yes, it hissed. I am familiar with them, their potential and their threat. Quite an intriguing animal. They are, my lord, Axleia replied. They are our inferiors in intellect, but when it comes to pure feral animal cunning, they may exceed even ourselves. They are not to be taken lightly. Yes, the creature chuckled. Their solution to the situation they faced during the Republic War was as ingenious as it was savage. And Patricia Who is among the most cunning and savage of the lot. I cannot overstate the danger to the Federation that individual poses. I also cannot overstate the poor timing of her arrival. Yes, the collective, the creature muttered. They are recovering far too quickly. Yes, my lord, Axleia said. The Federation may not have time to recover from whatever evil she has planned before we must face them. That's if the Federation survives whatever it is that she has planned in the first place, of course. You speak of her like she is a deep one. Such alarmist speech from you is unusual, Axleia. She has the red jelly, my lord, the creature thrashed. What? She has the means to reverse aging. I have verified this. I have scans of humans who have benefited from her gift, along with 4 specimens in a lab. Humans who should be showing the signs of advanced aging are physically once again youthful. This causes me great concern. It is the reason I have summoned you, my lord, Axleia said. One needs only to look at our history to know the damage it can cause a civilization. If it did that to us, one can only wonder what will happen to a lesser race. Axleia, despite herself, uncoiled and started to pace back and forth. And when we weathered that storm, the jelly was simply in the hands of the ambitious and greedy, not a creature of pure evil. Imagine if the hunger was the one who first discovered it. That is what the Republic and the Federation now faces. This is quite disturbing. Who knows of this? The creature hissed. Excluding those who have benefited in the Federation, only myself and a few trusted people under my direct control who are researching the issue. Axleia replied. I know not how many know in the Republic, but there is no mention of it in any medical journal, nor in any message that I have been able to intercept and decrypt. I know with a good amount of certainty that John Wintersmith, the Terran ambassador, knows thus, do his allies, but he is also remaining silent on the matter. Wise? Yes, John Wintersmith is that. He plays the fool, but much like Fluviax from the tales of old, he is far from one and is opposing her from within. He might be our greatest ally in this matter. Is he cooperating? Axleia snorted, blowing bubbles. Of course not, she chuckled. He would rather lose his gonads in a data crystal disintegrator than come to me for help. However, if it comes to it, he would rather come to me than lose to her. For now we are working towards the same end, but independently of each other. Is that not hazardous? 2 people of your stature striving in such close proximity? Extremely, my lord, Axleia said with a grin. However, it would be nowhere nearly as much fun otherwise. You are a strange representative of your species, Axleia, the creature chuckled. Fortunately, you seem to be well placed and quite suitable for this endeavor. The creature raised himself to a vertical position. You have my support in this. You are authorized to do anything short of causing a war with the Republic. Thank you, my lord, Axleia said, bowing low. Forgive my impertinence, but may I have a clearance to use more of our technology? You ask much, Sundrinker, the creature said. I cannot authorize that. However, I will bring this matter to the Forum. Thank you, my lord. Axleia. Yes, my lord? The humans who have received the jelly, kill them all. I am currently attempting to identify as many as I can before they start to try to conceal themselves, Axleia replied. Once I am satisfied with that investigation, we shall fall upon them with our fangs and our barbs, and none shall remain. Excellent. The Forum has complete faith in you. Thank you, my lord. The light from the creature faded away and the chamber doors opened. Axlia once again bowed deeply and swam towards the light. Dawn was sitting at her desk in front of Patricia Hu's office, polishing a blade. It was an ornate fighting knife, the latest gift from her mistress. She said that her old K-bar no longer suited her and that it was a relic from her previous life. Dawn couldn't agree more. The new knife. It was beautiful. She dropped it onto her desk and jumped to her feet as Crimson approached. Crimson. She was so beautiful. She was so perfect. She was everything Dawn wanted to be. Crimson looked at Dawn, the poor little mouse, Patricia's latest little toy. Poor thing had absolutely no idea what was about to happen to her. Crimson sneered. When Patricia was done with her, well, she would cease to exist and something else would be wearing her skin, just like the rest of us. And just like the rest of us, she will wind up either sitting at the table or she would wind up on it. Crimson looked at her with absolutely no emotion. If only she knew that her very soul depended on John holding fast. As soon as he broke, Dawn wouldn't be far behind. Patricia would be free to do whatever she wanted to her. Unfortunately for the little mouse that wasn't going to be killing her, Patricia said she had potential and Crimson knew better than anyone what Patricia did to potential. Poor little mouse. "Crimson, good afternoon," Dawn said enthusiastically. So innocent, so eager to please, so completely fucked, Crimson thought as she sneered. "Mouse." "How did the meeting go?" Dawn asked in an eager whisper. Patricia told her, Crimson thought in surprise. "Don't speak of things about which you aren't fit to discuss, mouse," Crimson spat. Dawn recoiled as if struck and looked down at her feet. She wanted Crimson to like her more than anything. "Is her ladyship in?" Yes, ma'am," Dawn stammered, still looking down. Crimson just brushed past her without a glance and walked into Patricia's office. Poor kid. Patricia was pacing her office like a caged panther. It had not been a good day. She had just received some less than pleasant news from back home in the Republic. 2 of her riders had been found shot dead, the killers unknown. They were good men, impossible to replace. Someone was meddling. Now she had to deal with that as well as the guppy. She enjoyed a challenge, but this was getting ridiculous. Not only that, but John simply refused to break. She had all but wrapped her legs around him, and he just stood there like he had a ramrod up his ass. At least he had reverted to wearing his uniform. That had to be a good sign, right? She paused in front of a mirror, examining herself closely. No, she looked exactly as she did in the full flower of her youth, no. She looked better. Besides, even without this new enhanced beauty, she had no problem betting even the great Tak Nakamura, who until now had been her greatest challenge. The door opened and Crimson walked in unannounced. Patricia scowled. She didn't knock, and she wasn't bowing. Patricia looked Crimson in the eyes, and after a second, Crimson knelt. It was 1 second too late. Perhaps her newfound authority emboldened her. Patricia decided not to mention it. She needed Crimson at her best, and if that meant giving that beast a longer leash, so be it. "My lady," Crimson said respectfully, "I have met with the hatchet, and they have started their assignment." "Good news at last," Patricia said, returning to her lacquered throne. "What was your impression of them?" "The hatchet is a woman," Crimson replied. "She initially looked unsuitable, but then I looked into her eyes. I believe she is exactly what we paid for." "Let's hope so," Patricia replied. "The guppy needs to be eliminated." "I am most curious as to the exact method the assassination will take," Crimson said calmly. "So am I," Patricia laughed. "Her methods are always most entertaining." Patricia opened her desk and pulled out a small black enamel case. Crimson raised an eyebrow. "She's resorting to that?" "John is taking too long," Patricia chuckled as she pulled out a small capsule. "His resolve is absolutely delicious. What an asset he will be at my side." "Yes, my lady," Crimson said with a wicked smile. Well, that's it for John, she thought to herself. And so he falls, and the embassy with him. Once the guppy is gone, we will be free to act. Not only that, dear child, Patricia smiled. We are encountering resistance at home as well. Oh? We lost Fabian and Garnet this morning. What? Forgive my outburst, my lady. You are forgiven, my child, Patricia laughed. I had much the same reaction. While I am certain it isn't John's doing, I am also certain he knows who did it. John is no fool. He would have sought allies, and once he falls, he will give all of them up to me. She held the capsule to the light, admiring it. It bruises my pride to use this, and it saddens me to stop my fun, but with the latest developments, I need him to fall now. Poor bastard, Crimson laughed. Oh, he'll love it, Patricia laughed. Of that I have no doubt, my lady. Brenda was sipping a big cappuccino as she fumbled with a tourist guide. Oops, sorry, she said in a perfect Federation accent as she bumped into a feathery creenel. He just clicked his beak in their equivalent of a shrug and continued on. The words, Federation Identity Badge, Federation Intelligence, Clearance Level 3, name, Rax Jen, flashed across her vision. He was the 5th Federation Intel employee she had bumped into on this route, much better than the other approaches. She mentally triggered a notepad application and jotted down some observations. She paused at a street corner, made a silly duck face, and with a slightly shaking hand took a selfie. Actually, it was approximately 20,000 selfies, thanks to the cheap camera she bought and modified last night. She sat down on a park bench and pulled out her tablet. She pulled out a small plug and, brushing aside her dingy brown hair, she slid it into a small neural jack mounted into her skull. She started the process of compiling and analyzing the images, building a detailed 3-dimensional map of the area. She smiled. Reflections off of some windows hit pay dirt. She had some nice angles of the Federation Intelligence Building. She added them to an encrypted folder, wandered aimlessly down the street, and repeated the process. She broke out in a goofy-looking grin. She had it. Time to go shopping. As the day wound to an end, Patricia, in one of her sexiest outfits, walked into John's office. As she did so, she bit into a small capsule. The bitter contents coated the inside of her mouth as she swirled her tongue about in the oily liquid. John looked up at her and made that simply adorable face he made when he was angry. Having him was going to be so wonderful. "What do you want, Patricia?" John asked, leaning back in his chair. Oh, God, she was so beautiful. "Oh, I just wanted to wish you a good evening," Patricia said in a warm voice as she glided over towards his desk. "And I wanted to try to clear the air a bit." John said dubiously as he just sat there. He didn't dare try to stand. It was all he could do not to walk over to her and... "No, seriously," Patricia said as she sat on his desk, leaning forward. "I know we have our differences," she said, exhaling slowly and evenly, "but we need to work together." A cloud of tailored chemicals wrapped around John, triggering a massive release of hormones, particularly oxytocin. John flinched slightly at the strange, sweet scent. His head started to swim. What was happening? Patricia smiled. She was so pretty when she smiled. She toyed with the collar of her top. She was so close. He could just reach out and... No! John swallowed and shook his head. "There is absolutely no reason for us to work against one another, John," Patricia said, leaning in even closer. "We both love the Republic in our own way." Sure you do," John said, managing a little sarcasm. "But I do," Patricia said with such a beautiful smile. "I have my past, sure, but I believe that the Republic is the best chance for humanity's future. A future that we could shape together," she said as she exhaled again. I don't think we have the same vision for the future," John said, pushing his chair away from the desk. "You might be surprised," Patricia said, her beautiful eyes sparkling in the light. Oh, they were so beautiful. "And here's another surprise for you, John," she said as she exhaled. "I want you." What? That was fantastic. No, wait. Yeah, I know what happens. Not like that, John. I actually want you. No games. I want you in my bed. I want you inside me. John couldn't even speak. He watched as she stood back up and walked over to him. He pushed his chair back until it hit the wall. Patricia leaned in with those gorgeous eyes, parted her moist, inviting lips, and leaned in to kiss him. She caressed his hair gently and then guided his face up to meet hers, and kissed him. Electric arcs of pleasure coursed through John as she exhaled more of the fumes directly into his mouth, into his lungs. This was real. She actually wanted him. Maybe it could work. "No!" John thought as he pushed her away. "Elle, leave now!" Patricia just smiled and straightened up. Okay, John, I won't try to make you do something you don't want to do, she smiled. You can't forgive a girl for trying. Not every day a man turns my head after all. She turned and walked seductively away. At the door, she paused. If you change your mind, she said with a beautiful, seductive smile, you know where my room is. John just sat there, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the arms of his chair. Patricia walked away with a victorious smile. She delivered the venom. She imprinted herself. Now all she had to do was let the poison do its work. Tomorrow, he would be hers. Brenda walked into her hotel room carrying a bunch of shopping bags. She tossed them on the bed and retrieved her suitcase. Inside, taking up most of the space, was a toolkit. She opened it and placed it on the desk. She then pulled out a pair of gloves and retrieved the first of her purchases, a high-quality RC camera-grav drone. As the night turned into morning, she, using a tiny welding rig, expertly fused the final component into place. She held up a small cylinder with tiny fins. She pulled out a sheet of stickers and peeled off a classic yellow smiley face sticker and pressed it over its rounded nose. Perfect, she said, breaking out into her goofy grin. Earlier that evening, John paced back and forth in his room. He was consumed with desire. There was nothing in the entire galaxy he wanted more than to go to Patricia's room and fall into her embrace. Nothing. He had to get out of there. She was too close. He took off his uniform. It wasn't doing a goddamn thing anymore. He threw on some street clothes and a jacket and walked towards the embassy exit. Going for a walk, Ambassador? The guard at the gate asked in surprise. Just getting some air, John said as he walked out of the gate and down the street. He wandered aimlessly through the city, finally winding up in the dark, unlit streets of the Starport district. He had no idea where he was headed until he wound up at the noodle shop. It was still open. Maybe some food would help. If nothing else, the place had booze. Maybe he could get drunk enough that he couldn't do anything. The owner gave him a big smile as he sat down at one of the stools. Noodle? The ex-ally said in his broken speech. Yeah, and beer, John replied. Wait, do you have whiskey? No, but have, the ex-ally said as he pulled out a plain white bottle. SciFi? Very good, he said as he poured out a clear liquid into a mostly clean glass. John slammed it down. Jesus, he thought, it tasted like kerosene. It was worse than the stuff he used to confiscate from the troops from time to time. He coughed. It was paint stripper, but damned if it didn't help. He felt a bit clearer. Keep them coming. The ex-VLI just grinned, baring his yellow fangs, and put the open bottle down next to him. You're a good man, John said gratefully. A good ex-VLI, I mean. The owner just grinned and went into the back. John poured himself another shot and slammed it down. Fuck! It was worse than the first one. Oh, shit, I inhaled it. He started coughing as it burned his lungs. He poured another. More than a little while later, the owner took his goddamn time making those noodles he was finally digging into his bowl when he heard a familiar voice behind him. Well, fancy meeting you here, Skippy giggled. You're out late. So are you, John replied. Yeah, I had this bullshit dinner I had to go to, Skippy said as she flopped down onto a stool next to him. Bunch of boring assholes and shit to eat. I had to get some real food, she giggled. Thanks, Vikik-the-dee-deed, she said, as a bowl of noodles was set down in front of her. Hey, John shouted in mock annoyance. She got hers right away. What gives? The owner just shrugged and put an empty glass in front of Skippy, who promptly grabbed the white bottle and poured a shot. She slowly drank it and licked her lips. Ah, that's the good stuff. Are you fucking kidding me? John laughed, pouring himself another one. You humans just don't know good drink, Skippy giggled. You look like hell, John. What's up? Oh, fuck, I don't even know where to start, Skippy, John said, slamming down another shot. It's that bitch, Patricia. How did I know that human was involved? She'd do something? Yeah, me. Almost. Jesus. She's got into my head bad. All I can think about is her and how bad I want to fuck her. How sick is that? So why don't you? Skippy giggled. Board your drop pod and invade that whore. Maybe you can fuck some sense into her. I can't, John moaned, holding his head. I don't know how she does it, but every single man who has ever wound up in bed with her, she owns all of them. What? She cast some witchcraft bullshit on them? Skippy asked as she took a shot. Who knows? John replied, downing another shot. All I know is everyone, even Tak Nakamura, winds up with a collar around their neck. Well, fuck someone else. Get it out of your system. Go over to Porky Town and go nuts. Oh, yeah, the Terran ambassador gets caught with a porky? John grumbled. Front page tomorrow and on my way back to the Republic the next day. Then Patricia is the ambassador and there's no stopping her. Someone from the embassy, then? They are all under me, John moaned. I can't bet a subordinate. One, that's just wrong, and two, against regulations. I'd be playing right into her hands. Skippy grabbed the bottle and turned it up for a second. Well, she said, looking over at him, what if you had a friend, someone that you trusted, who was willing to help? What do you mean? John fell silent as a furry leg brushed against him. Skippy just cocked a faceted eye at him. You can't be serious. Way to let a girl down easy, asshole, Skippy giggled. Look, John, I like you. I mean like you. You are cool and smart and funny as fuck, and you can stick it to the feds like nobody else. I think very highly of you as well, Skippy. Wow, such a romantic. No wonder Patricia is all over you, she giggled. No, I mean, I really think you are pretty great as well, John replied. He couldn't believe he was actually considering it. I mean, would it even work? Yep, I checked, Skippy replied as she took another shot. I have an innie, you have an outie. Should work just fine. She leaned against him. So? It's just that you are one of the only friends I have over here, John said after a few seconds. I wouldn't want to lose that. To lose you. You mean a lot to me, Skippy. You won't lose me, and you mean a lot to me too, Skippy said, looking into his eyes. John never really looked into her eyes. Did every facet have a pupil? John looked down and sighed. Look, you need someone, Skippy said, putting her arm around him. And I'm in the same boat. I can't be with anyone at the embassy, and I can't just hop around like I used to because I'm a counselor. I need this too, she said, leaning her head against him. The owner of the place just shook his head, grabbed the bottle, took a long drink, and then walked over to the back of the shop and unlocked a door. Deaf real, he muttered, and walked off. Come on, Skippy said quietly as she took John's hand and led him through the doorway. Inside was a metal-walled room with a large conference table. What? John asked. Don't worry about it, Skippy replied as she guided him towards another room piled with cushions. A while later, Skippy laid on John's chest, her breath coming out in ragged gasps. John looked down at her. Holy shit, he gasped. Skippy grinned. Again? Yeah, it's going to take a little bit, but he looked down. Never mind, he said happily and embraced her. The next morning, John sauntered into the embassy and passed Toby on his way to his office. I know that look, sir, Toby said, wiggling his eye stalks. I'm certain I don't know what you mean, Toby, John said as he patted Toby on the back and Moon walked to his office door. A few hours later, Patricia, wearing a sleek black wrap dress, glided through the embassy. It's been more than long enough, she thought to herself. Time to set the hook. She smiled. It was a shame. She had hoped to break down John using just her own will, but needs must. She walked past Toby without even acknowledging him and strode into John's office. John set down his coffee and looked up. Without saying a word, she locked his office door and walking towards him, she loosened her dress, letting it fall to her feet, revealing her naked body. Completely nude, she confidently started to glide towards him. Damn, John said happily, and good morning to you too. Patricia just stood there in shock. I could get used to these morning meetings, John said with a grin. So, what can I do for my favorite Sith Lord? He did a little drum roll on his desk. Today. I normally would consider saying such things inappropriate, but considering the circumstances, may I say that you are one hot tamale. Those surgeons didn't miss a single spot. John grinned. Patricia mumbled something unintelligible, and with a notable lack of grace ran to her dress, bent over to pick it up, hastily wrapped it around her, and fled. John leaned back in his chair and let out a contented sigh. That, he thought, was better than anything, except Skippy. Patricia, in complete shock, walked stiffly through the embassy, clutching her dress to her. What happened? She couldn't believe it. She had never been refused and to be laughed at? This was humiliating. John was laughing at her. Laughing! She stumbled, her face red, to the sanctuary of her office. She was too hurt, confused, and humiliated to even be angry. All she wanted to do was crawl under her desk and die. Crimson was lounging near Dawn's desk, waiting for Patricia to do the deed and return with orders. John was done for. Once Patricia set the hook, there was nothing a human could do. Men like John were trained to withstand pain, withstand adversity, withstand all number of things. Nobody was truly prepared to withstand pleasure. John would be no different. She looked in shock as Patricia walked stiffly into view, several hours too soon. Crimson's eyes widened in delighted surprise as she took one look at Patricia, still clutching at her dress. Stumbling red faced her way. He refused her, Crimson thought as she struggled to keep her expression even. She was refused. Hard! There was no mistaking it. He not only withstood her seduction, but he withstood the drugs. It was unbelievable. There was someone stronger than Patricia. Dawn stood up and gave Patricia a wolfish grin. So, is John one of us, and... Patricia lashed out, letting her dress partially fall open. Her hand stopped a millimeter away from Dawn's skull. Dawn staggered back, stunned. Patricia just stroked Dawn's hair briefly. Then she pulled her dress closed. "I am not to be disturbed," Patricia yelled, and slammed the door shut behind her. Around noon, Counselor Skippy walked into the embassy. She had spent too much of the morning preening. She felt stupid. She was an adult. An old one at that, and here she was, all nervous like a cadet on bonfire night. She squared her shoulders and took a deep breath. She then made her way to Toby's desk. Good morning, Toby," she said as nonchalantly as she could. "Is John free?" Toby, his eye stalks still wiggling from the morning's drama, looked up. The eye stalks stopped wiggling. "No fucking way!" "Why, yes, I believe he is," Toby said successfully, keeping his voice even. He pressed the intercom. "Ambassador, the ex-VLI counselor is here to see you." "Oh, great, yes, please let her in." "Well, this is unexpected," Toby thought as he, holding his eye stalks ramrod straight, let Skippy in. Skippy walked nervously into John's office. Hi," she said quietly. "Hi, yourself," John said as he stood and walked around his desk. "Yeah, about last night," Skippy said nervously, twisting one of her feet. "Yeah, last night was what?" John wrapped his arms around her and gave her a tender kiss. "Last night was perfect." "It was," Skippy giggled. "Oh, yeah," John grinned. "So I haven't lost you?" "Nope," Skippy said, booping his nose. "So," John said with a smile. "About time for lunch? Up for some noodles?" "A few bowls of noodles sound pretty damn good," she giggled. "A few bowls?" John grinned. "I'm not a kid anymore, you know."